Jalen Moore swung into the Mason Creek gas station after varsity practice, just craving a cold drink. He had no idea his ordinary stop was about to detonate into something vicious and unforgettable. Two white deputies rolled up, suspicion already simmering behind their narrowed eyes. To them, Jalen was danger wrapped in brown skin. A body to control, not a 17-year-old kid heading home. Voices climbed, tempers snapped, and soon the concrete would be smeared with blood and humiliation. What they didn't know was who they'd laid hands on. His mother, FBI Special Agent Renee Moore. When she arrived, every badge in sight would lock up, every smirk freezing solid. Before we go any further, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. Tomorrow's chapter goes even deeper. The sticky Georgia humidity clung to Jalen as he pushed open the cracked glass door of the Bright Mart. The chime tinkled overhead, and a blast of frigid air conditioning washed over his sweat-damp jersey. Fluorescent lights buzzed above empty aisles. "Evening, Mr. Price," Jalen called, nodding at the older man behind the counter. Harold Price looked up from his newspaper, offering a weary grin. "How'd practice go, kid?" "Pretty good. Coach says I might start Friday." Jalen drifted toward the coolers, sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. He pulled out his phone, thumbs flying. Home in 10. "Need anything?" he texted his mom. The cooler door fogged as he opened it and grabbed a Sprite. His phone buzzed. Renee's reply flashed across the screen. "Just you. Safe and on time." Jalen smiled, snagging a bag of chips. He was halfway to the register when red and blue strobes splashed through the front windows, painting the walls in violent colors. Two cruisers screeched into the lot, gravel crunching underneath their tires like broken bones. Jalen's stomach tightened, that old instinct Renee had drilled into him awakening immediately. Stay calm, stay respectful, know your rights. The bell chimed again as Deputy Cole Vickers strutted in, Officer Brian Rudd on his heels. Vickers's hand rested on his holster. Mouth tugged into an eager grin. "Got a call about a robbery a few blocks over," he announced, eyes locking on Jalen. "Suspect's a young black male around 6 foot. His lips curved into something uglier. "Well now, what do we have?" Jalen's heart hammered, but his voice stayed steady. "Just grabbing a drink, sir. Coming straight from basketball practice." "Sure you are, boy," Vickers sneered. He circled Jalen like a shark tasting blood. "Empty your pockets." "I haven't done anything wrong," Jalen answered quietly, still clutching his unopened Sprite and chips. "I'm here all the time. Mr. Price knows me." Harold shifted behind the counter, clearing his throat. "Officers, the kid's fine. He's here almost every night after practice." Vickers ignored him. "I said empty your pockets. Now." Rudd moved to the door, blocking any exit. With shaking hands, Jalen set his snacks on a nearby shelf and pulled out his pockets. "Phone, wallet, house key, gym pass. That's it." "Oh, you think you're clever?" Vickers snarled, grabbing Jalen's arm. "Outside." "Wait, please," Jalen began, but Vickers was already dragging him through the doorway. "Mr. Price, please call my mom," he shouted. The heavy night air slammed into him as they shoved him against the hot patrol car. "Spread him out," Vickers barked. "I'm not resisting," Jalen choked, cheek mashed to the warm metal. "I haven't done anything." A handful of bystanders gathered. Elena Ruiz, still in scrubs from her hospital shift, lifted her phone. Her hands trembled with fury as she hit record. "Quit squirming!" Vickers shouted, though Jalen was perfectly still. "I'm not," Jalen gasped. words slicing off when a brutal punch landed in his side. His knees buckled from the blow. "He's resisting," Rudd called, voice wobbling. Pain blurred everything. The taser's bite ripped through Jalen's body, electricity, searing every nerve. He screamed as they hurled him to the ground, skin scraping across unforgiving concrete. Blood leaked from his nose, mixing with tears. "Mama," he whimpered. "Somebody call my mama." Vickers drove a knee into his back, yanking his arms behind him as metal cuffs clamped down. "Shut up. Crying for mommy now?" Elena's voice cut through the crowd. "He's just a kid! This is wrong!" "Back up," Rudd ordered, hands shaking as he faced the onlookers. "This is police business." Harold stood in the doorway, knuckles white on the frame. He wanted to shout, to step between them, but decades of learned fear pinned him in place. He watched as they hauled Jalen upright, jersey torn and stained, blood dripping from his split lip. As they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, Jalen spotted Elena still filming. Rage etched across her face. The engine roared. Through the window, Harold shook his head, words barely audible. They just made their worst mistake. Elena looked down at her phone, red recording light still burning. Her thumb hovered over the upload button. She knew this video could change everything. Sirens faded into the thick Georgia night, carrying away a boy whose only crime was craving a soda. In Atlanta, Renee Moore's pen skimmed across paperwork in her small apartment, the only other sound the low hum of her laptop. Months of undercover work on police corruption sprawled in files across her desk. Her coffee sat forgotten, long gone cold. Her phone buzzed again, the 5th time in 20 minutes. She'd been ignoring it, locked in on her report. This time, the constant vibration made her glance over. 12 missed calls. 23 unread texts. At the top sat a shared video. Police brutality in Mason Creek. Something icy dropped into her stomach. Mason Creek, where Jalen was supposed to be grabbing a drink. Her fingers shook as she tapped the link. The video loaded, grainy at first, then sharpening. Her mug slipped from her hand, shattering on hardwood. On her screen, she watched deputies slam her son against a squad car. "No," she breathed, voice cracking as they threw him to the ground. "No! No! No!" Every panicked cry from Jalen hit like a punch. Every laugh from the officers stoked the fire rising in her chest. When the taser cracked, Renee slapped a hand over her mouth to smother a scream. Her son's blood on asphalt, his ruined jersey, his terrified voice calling for her like he had as a little boy. She moved before the video ended. Gun from the safe, checked on autopilot despite shaking hands. Badge, keys, phone. Her brain ping-ponged between protocol and raw rage. The elevator felt useless. She bolted for the stairs instead. Her black FBI-issued SUV chirped as she unlocked it. The engine snarled when she twisted the key, and she peeled out of the garage, lights flashing. 2 hours to Mason Creek, way too long. Her hands strangled the steering wheel, knuckles pale. Memories flickered, teaching Jalen how to talk to cops, role-playing traffic stops, watching him rehearse "yes, sir" and "no, ma'am" in the bathroom mirror to keep himself alive. All that preparation, all that protection, shredded in minutes by 2 badges and a racist system. "Hold it together," she muttered, weaving through traffic. "Think like an agent. Document everything." She started making calls. First her supervisor, leaving a detailed voicemail. Location, timeline, possible civil rights violations. Then her lawyer. Then the Civil Rights Division. Each call crisp and professional. Her voice betraying none of the terror roaring underneath. The Mason Creek Police Department appeared just before midnight, a squat brick building with peeling paint and flickering signage. Renee parked directly in front, emergency lights still spinning. Inside, the front desk officer barely glanced up. "Can I help you?" he asked lazily. "I'm here for Jalen Moore," Renee replied, voice wrapped in velvet. "You have my son in custody," he sighed. "Visiting hours ended. Come back tomorrow to post bail." "I'm not here to visit." Renee slapped her FBI credentials onto the counter. "I'm here to take my son home. Now!" The badge gleamed under fluorescent lights. Phones stopped ringing. Conversations halted. The entire station inhaled sharply. I'll get the chief," the officer stammered, scrambling away from the desk. Renee stood perfectly still, counting measured breaths. Her eyes cataloged everything: camera placements, nameplates, the quiet shuffle of papers. Every detail could become evidence. Chief Everett Randall emerged, all polished Southern charm in a pressed uniform. His smile never reached his eyes. "Agent Moore," he drawled, "didn't realize the Bureau cared so much about small-town business." "Where is my son?" Renee asked, every syllable carved from steel. "Your boy was picked up in a robbery investigation," Randall replied smoothly. Matched the description. When officers tried to question him, he got combative. "I watched the video," Renee said, stepping closer. "I want the body cam footage. Now." Randall's smile tightened. "We're experiencing some technical issues with those files. Equipment malfunction. You understand." "Both cameras malfunction at the same time?" Renee's laugh was razor sharp. "That's a hell of a coincidence, Chief." "These things happen," he said, palms spread in practiced helplessness. "Once everything's sorted, my son, now!" Something in her eyes made Randall retreat half a step. He nodded toward a deputy who hurried off for keys. They led her down a narrow hallway to holding. Jalen sat on a metal bench, trying to fold himself smaller. Dried blood crusted his nose and lip. The jersey she'd sacrificed overtime to buy him was shredded. The cell door clanged open. Renee knelt, fingers feathering over bruises. His skin felt cold, his stare distant. "You're safe now, baby," she whispered, pulling him close despite his wince. "They don't realize who they picked a fight with." Dawn crept over Mason Creek. As her SUV cut through quiet streets, Jalen slumped in the passenger seat. Renee's eyes flicked constantly between mirrors and windshield. Every patrol car they passed made Jalen shrink down. Silence pressed heavy, broken only by his occasional hiss of pain when they hit bumps. His swollen face looked even worse in the gray morning light. The ER report sat in Renee's briefcase. Contusions, mild concussion, bruised ribs, every mark photographed and signed. "They tailing us?" Jalen whispered hoarsely. "No, baby," Renee said, squeezing his hand. "But I'm making sure." Her phone rang, jarring in the quiet. Assistant Director Neil Keaton's name glowed on the screen. She answered through the car's Bluetooth. "Agent Moore," Keaton's gravelly voice filled the SUV. "I've been briefed on the Mason Creek situation." "Sir, I'm compiling a full report. Civil rights violations, evidence tampering." "Stand down, Renee," Keaton cut in. "This isn't a federal matter." "With respect, sir, they beat my 17-year-old son and erased footage. I get that you're upset as a mother," Keaton interrupted, "but don't make this personal. Let local channels handle it." "Local channels?" Renee's laugh turned bitter. "Like the Internal Affairs Office run by Randall's brother-in-law?" "That's an order, Agent Moore," Keaton snapped, Drop it before you damage your career. Stay out of Mason Creek." The call clicked off. Renee's grip tightened until her fingers ached. "Mom," Jalen murmured, staring out the window. "Maybe we should just let it go. I don't want you losing your job because of me." Renee pulled into their driveway, putting the SUV in park. In the growing light, every bruise on his face came into brutal focus. Her kid, who helped neighbors with groceries and tutored younger kids in math, sat there broken. "Tell me everything," she said softly. "Every word, every hit." Jalen swallowed hard. "They never asked for ID, just grabbed me. When I tried to show my school card, Vickers laughed, said I probably stole it." Renee's throat tightened. "What else?" "They kept making jokes about running," Jalen said, wiping at his eyes. Rudd leaned in and whispered, "Bet your mama taught you how to run, huh?" Then they laughed. Renee closed her eyes, fighting down the fury. "Did they read your rights?" He shook his head. "No. They just kept hitting me. Said they'd plant something if I didn't confess." A sudden knock on the window made them jump. Mrs. Porter, their elderly neighbor, stood outside clutching a tablet. Renee stepped out, instinctively placing herself between the old woman and Jalen. But Mrs. Porter's face held worry, not judgment. "I saw what they did to your boy," she said, holding out the tablet. "My granddaughter Elena filmed everything. She sent me the original before posting. I made copies. Thought you might need them." Renee hit play. The footage was sharper than the viral upload, audio clear, officers' slurs unmistakable, every deliberate blow visible. You could even see them high-five after shoving Jalen into the cruiser. "It's everywhere," Mrs. Porter continued. Twitter, Facebook, the news. Folks are posting some hashtag, "Justice for Jalen." Right on cue, a news van turned onto their street. Then another, followed by a cluster of reporters. "Get inside," Renee told Jalen. "Doors locked. Curtains drawn." She turned back to Mrs. Porter. "Thank you. Would you give a formal statement if needed?" The older woman nodded firmly. "Those men in uniforms need to be stopped." Inside, Renee settled Jalen on the couch while cameras gathered outside. Their phones buzzed endlessly. Texts, missed calls, tags. The hashtag, "Oh Justice for Jalen," pulsed across every platform. Renee hooked the tablet to her laptop. She watched the video again and again. Each viewing fanned her rage but sharpened her focus. She paused on badge numbers, zoomed into name tags, noticed the reflection of a supposedly broken dash cam in a window. Jalen eventually drifted off under his pain meds, breathing shallowly, body curled to protect sore ribs. Renee watched him sleep, then turned back to the screen, freeze-framing Rudd's smirk as he taunted about running. "If they want dirty games," she muttered, dragging over her case files, "I'll show them what real investigation looks like." Her fingers flew over keys, accessing databases she'd built during years of civil rights work. Patterns emerged. Similar incidents buried in bureaucratic language, officers quietly transferred, evidence repeatedly misplaced. Mason Creek wasn't an exception. It was part of a grim pattern stretching back years. The afternoon sun burned through her office window as she sorted files and made more calls. The TV droned until a familiar name snapped her attention back. Breaking news from Mason Creek regarding the arrest of local teen Jalen Moore. On screen, Chief Randall stood at a podium, silver hair gleaming, expression solemn but controlled. Security footage clearly shows the suspect attempting to leave with unpaid merchandise, he declared. When confronted, he struck Deputy Vickers. Grainy footage flashed, chopped clips of Jalen in the store. Renee's blood boiled. The brutal takedown, the slurs, the taser, all edited out. What remained looked like Jalen starting a fight. "Mom," Jalen called from the couch. "They're lying. I know," Renee said, grabbing her keys and badge. "Stay put. Lock the doors." The drive to the station took 7 minutes. She counted each one like a countdown. The parking lot teemed with news vans and protesters hoisting signs. "Justice for Jalen. Stop police brutality." Inside, ICAIR slapped her. At the front desk, Rudd lounged with a smug grin that widened when he saw her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, dragging out the last word. "I need to see Chief Randall," Renee replied. "Now." "Chief's in a meeting," he said. Renee dropped her FBI creds on the desk. "Tell him Agent Moore is here about tampering with evidence in a federal probe." Rudd's smirk faltered. He muttered into the phone, then gestured down the hall. "He'll see you." Officers fell quiet as she passed. Deputy Vickers leaned back in his chair, boots on his desk, looking completely relaxed. A few hushed conversations died mid-sentence as Renee walked by. Randall's office smelled of leather and stale cigar smoke. He stood behind his mahogany desk, staring out the window. "Nice performance on TV," Renee said, shutting the door behind her. "Agent Moore," he replied, still facing the glass. "I thought I'd made myself clear last night." "I want the full footage," Renee said. "Security cameras, body cams, dash cams, all of it." Randall turned, smile brittle. "That's impossible. As I mentioned, we've had technical issues." "Technical issues don't selectively cut footage to frame a kid," Renee shot back. "Your son was caught stealing by officers whose body cams conveniently failed in a store where the owner says he did nothing wrong," Randall countered. "File a formal request through appropriate channels." Renee pulled out her phone, logging into the FBI system. Her face darkened. "The case is already sealed," she said quietly. "That fast? Who's your inside help at the Bureau?" Something flickered across Randall's features. Triumph. "We're done here, Agent Moore," he said. "Don't let motherly feelings compromise your professional judgment." Renee left the station, mind racing. This wasn't just small-town corruption anymore. Someone with federal pull was backing them. She drove to First Baptist Church on Malcolm Dexter Boulevard, where Pastor Leonard Briggs had been a civil rights pillar longer than she'd been alive. The aging building's paint peeled, but its doors stayed open to anyone seeking justice. Pastor Briggs sat in his cramped office surrounded by yellowed headlines and protest photos. His eyes were sharp despite his years. He took in Renee's badge and storm cloud expression. "Been expecting you," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Saw what they did to your boy. Saw the lies they told too." "I need to know what I'm up against," Renee replied. Briggs sighed, pulling a thick folder from his drawer. 1987, James Walker, 18, charged with resisting, beaten so badly he lost an eye. 1995, Marcus Bell, 17, fit the description, suddenly found with drugs. 2003, David Carter, 16, attacked an officer, left paralyzed. He spread out photos and clippings. Every time footage vanished, files sealed. Good cops got shipped out or fired. "They keep getting away with it because you're not fighting two men," Briggs said quietly. "You're fighting the machine that shields them." Same judges signing warrants, same prosecutors declining charges, same federal names on the sealed file orders. Renee drove home in gathering darkness, Briggs's words heavy on her shoulders. The house was dark except for Jalen's bedroom light upstairs. The crash of breaking glass shattered the quiet. Renee drew her gun and moved toward the living room. A rock rested among sparkling shards beneath the broken window, a note wrapped around it with a rubber band. She unrolled the paper, hands steady despite the adrenaline. Leave town or lose your badge. Upstairs, Jalen stirred. "Mom? What was that?" Renee looked from the note to the weight of her Glock in her hand. She thought of those other mothers' sons, James, Marcus, David, and all the ones Briggs had named. Boys the system had chewed up and erased. "Not this time," she whispered, grip tightening. She refused to let Jalen join them. 2 days later, harsh hospital lighting carved shadows across Jalen's bruised face at Atlanta Medical Center. Renee sat in the waiting room, scrolling through case files on her phone, when an unfamiliar number from FBI headquarters flashed. "Agent Moore," a chill voice said. "This is Administrative Services. Effective immediately, your security clearance is suspended pending review of recent conduct." Renee's hand clenched around the phone. "On what grounds?" "Interference with local law enforcement and possible misuse of federal resources. Formal documentation will follow within 24 hours. The line went dead. Renee stared at her screen, mind racing. She'd expected pushback, but this was tactical. Another call came in. Logan Pierce, a fellow agent she'd trusted on undercover ops for years. Something already felt off. "Renee," he said too casually, "heard about your suspension. I'm trying to help here. You need to drop Mason Creek." "Help?" Renee kept her tone neutral. "Like helping seal those files?" "Come on, you know how it goes," Logan said. "Small-town politics, jurisdictional headaches. Let it go before—" "Before what?" she asked. He hesitated. She heard him swallow. "Before you lose everything you've built. Think about Jalen. He needs his mom employed, not—" "Don't you dare use my son to threaten me," Renee cut in, voice like ice. "What did they offer you, Logan? Promotion? Bonus?" "Renee, you're not thinking straight," he muttered. She hung up. His carefully chosen words and nervous tone confirmed it. He wasn't warning her. He was delivering a message. A doctor called Jalen's name. Renee watched him limp towards the exam room, shoulders tight. The bruises were fading, but something deeper had cracked. His trust in the world, his sense of safety. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Pastor Briggs. "Meet us at Morales Media, 2 p.m., bringing someone you should meet." 2 hours later, Renee pulled into a converted warehouse downtown. A sign read, "Morales Independent News Network." Inside, exposed brick walls were lined with photos of marches, headlines about protests. Nadia Cruz looked younger than Renee expected. Early 30s, sharp-eyed, laptop covered in justice stickers. Briggs made quick introductions. "Agent Moore," Nadia said, spinning her laptop around. "What happened to your son isn't random. I've been tracking Mason Creek PD for years. Look at this." Charts filled the screen. Arrest spikes, complaint logs, missing evidence. 10 years of targeted brutality, Nadia explained. Always young black men. Always technical issues with cameras. Every case ruled justified. "How do they keep dodging consequences?" Renee asked. Nadia clicked to another window. "Money." Financial records appeared. Civil forfeiture funds, padded budgets, mysterious donations. "Somebody's paying to keep this buried," Nadia said. "And someone in the bureau is helping." "They didn't know who Jalen's mother was," Renee muttered. "That's their slip." "Exactly. Now we have a crack in the armor," Nadia said. Back home that night, Renee spread files across the dining table. Jalen was staying with his aunt for safety. Lightning flickered outside as she cross-referenced names and dates. One name popped up, and then another. Her hands trembled. 3 deaths labeled overdoses. Young black men stopped by Mason Creek PD weeks before dying. All linked to Vickers and Rudd, each with conveniently corrupted or missing footage. Malcolm Green, 20, found in his car with fentanyl in his system after a routine stop. Dashcam corrupted. Deshaun Rivers, 18, died after a night in lockup. Holding cell camera malfunctioned. Andre Cole, 21, dead at home after a wellness check. Body cam footage from the visit lost in transfer. Renee's stomach twisted. This wasn't just brutality, it looked like murder covered in paperwork and lies. She lined up their photos beside Jalen's medical pictures. Same officers, same pattern, same convenient failures. Thunder boomed. Renee stepped to the window, rain lashing the glass. Her reflection stared back. Not just an agent, but a mother standing between predators and every kid like her son. "You picked the wrong family," she whispered. Lightning flashed over stacks of evidence. 10 years of crimes ready to be exposed. She dialed Nadia. "I found something," she said. 3 deaths. Same officers. We need to connect the dots. "Meet me at Maggie's Cafe at dawn," Nadia replied. "Bring everything. And Renee, watch your back. People who expose systems like this tend to have accidents." Renee hung up, eyes lingering on the victims' faces. Dawn broke over Mason Creek as Renee's SUV pulled into the nearly empty lot outside Maggie's Cafe. Inside, Nadia already occupied a corner booth. Laptop open, 3 empty coffee cups scattered across the table. "You haven't slept," Nadia observed, sliding a fresh cup toward her. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those boys' faces," Renee said. "And Jalen's." Nadia turned her screen, showing a blueprint of the police station. "My source says there's a backup system that auto-uploads security feeds to the town's central server," Nadia explained. "They seized Harold's hardware, but missed a copy in evidence locker B7, an old storage room." "How sure is this source?" Renee asked. "He's done their IT for a decade," Nadia said. "Hates what he's seen, finally ready to talk." Before they could plan further, a young officer approached their car outside. "Chief Randall requests you at the station, Agent Moore," he said nervously. "Says it's about your son's case." Renee traded a look with Nadia. "Distraction or trap?" "Tell him I'll be there in an hour," she replied. What Renee didn't know yet was how far they'd go to protect themselves, or how much she'd have to sacrifice to bring the whole rotten system crashing down. The patrol car rode her bumper, high beams stabbing through her rear window. Renee kept the speedometer nailed to the limit, hands locked at 10 and 2, refusing to flinch or react. The cruiser swerved around, cutting close enough to graze her front bumper before darting ahead. Classic intimidation move. When it finally sped off, the message it left behind was unmistakable. Dusk smeared the sky in orange when Renee turned into her driveway. A familiar government sedan sat across the street, Logan Pierce's bureau-issued car. He waited on her porch steps, face arranged in sympathetic concern. "Ne heard about the suspension?" he called as she approached. "Keaton's out of line. You know this whole thing reeks." Renee studied the man who'd watched her back for 6 years. She caught the tiny signs she used to ignore. The tension at his jaw, the way his right hand kept brushing his collar. Logan's lifelong tell whenever he shaded the truth. "Come inside," she said lightly. "Could use a friendly face." In the living room, he paced while she made coffee. "Maybe stepping back's smartest," he suggested. "Let things cool. You still holding that original footage?" "Destroyed in the evidence room fire," Renee lied smoothly. "They boxed me in, Logan. I'm out of plays. They won." She watched relief soften his shoulders, his voice turning almost paternal. "Sometimes the system works better from inside," he said. "Give it time." For an hour he circled the same topic, gently probing what proof she might still possess. Renee played exhausted, beaten, carefully feeding his assumptions. When he finally left, she waited 3 precise minutes before slipping out the back door. During her fake search for dropped keys, she'd already stuck a quarter-size tracker to his rear axle. On her phone, his location dot slid steadily north, away from town. Renee followed at a respectful distance in her old sedan, staying on back roads, headlights dimmed, heart pounding but movements controlled. Logan's signal stopped near a lonely lakefront, Chief Randall's weekend cabin, according to property records. Renee parked behind thick trees, set her phone to record, then crept through underbrush until the cabin windows came into view. Through the glass, she caught Logan and Randall in a paneled study. Logan handed over a thick folder bureau-style case file. Randall passed him a fat envelope. Renee zoomed in, capturing every damning detail. Randall's satisfied grin. Logan thumbing through obvious stacks of cash. Their handshake looked effortless, practiced. 2 men who'd done this dance many times before. "Got you," Renee whispered, framing at Logan's face perfectly as he left. Crickets chirped. Lake water lapped softly against the shore. She waited until both vehicles disappeared into the trees before retreating to her car. Suspension suddenly felt less like punishment and more like clearance to move freely. They thought they'd sidelined her, chained her to policy and paperwork. Instead, they'd accidentally unhooked her from their rules. Before dawn, Renee woke with strategy buzzing through her veins, mind racing through contingency plans. She ghosted through the house, checking doors, windows, angles of approach. Old FBI habits that now felt like lifelines instead of training exercises. The first gray light seeped through curtains as she nudged Jalen awake. "We need to pack, baby," she murmured, sitting on his bed. "Only essentials. Patricia in Atlanta can keep you a while." Jalen rubbed his eyes, bruises still visible despite the dim bedroom light. "I don't want to leave you here alone," he whispered. "I'm not the one they're trying to break," Renee said, squeezing his hand. "Pack your basketball stuff. Patricia's boy plays varsity too. You'll have company." While Jalen shuffled between dresser and duffel upstairs, Renee moved room to room downstairs collecting documents, birth certificate, school files, medical reports, copies of everything important. Backup plans for backup plans weren't paranoia anymore. They were armor. Humid morning air wrapped around her as she stepped onto the porch with keys in hand. She froze. All 4 tires on her FBI SUV sagged, rubber shredded into ribbons. Someone had taken their time. Across the driver's side, jagged red spray paint screamed a message. "We warned you." Renee's hand instinctively moved to where her sidearm normally rested, only to grasp empty AR. Internal suspension meant no weapon, no badge. She scanned the street, cataloging which porch lights burned, which cars had shifted since last night. Mrs. Porter stood at her window already, phone pressed to her ear, likely dialing 911 with shaking hands. But Renee knew response would be slow, if it came at all. Her phone buzzed. Pastor Briggs's name appeared. "They hit the church," he said, voice worn. "Spray paint, broken windows, slurs, pews trashed." "You okay?" Renee asked, closing her eyes briefly. "I'm breathing," he answered. "But folks are rattled. Some of the young ones are ready to swing back. Hard. And honestly, I can't blame them anymore." "Now we're calling a meeting," Renee decided. "Tonight, at the church. We show them everything, the raw footage, the patterns, all of it. People need to see exactly what we're up against. You sure that's wise? Briggs asked. Wisdom isn't moving the needle, Reverend, she replied. Truth might. As she hung up, a pickup rolled by, slow. Two white men inside glaring like they owned the road. She recognized them from the diner the day before, the ones who'd hurled names and tried to run her out. The truck circled the block again and again, a third slow loop before finally disappearing. Renee called a rideshare for Jalen, sending him to Patricia's with instructions to text upon arrival. She watched the car until it turned out of sight. Then she locked her front door and started walking. 8 blocks to the church gave her plenty of time to absorb every hostile stare, every muttered comment. Outside a corner store, an older white woman actually crossed herself as Renee passed, like warding off evil. The church exterior was smeared with ugly words, windows boarded where glass had shattered. Inside, though, the sanctuary still hummed with something solid. Briggs was already scrubbing paint, shoulders bent, humming an old spiritual under his breath. They think this shuts us up, he said without turning, like we haven't outlived worse storms. All day people trickled in. News traveled by whispered conversations, encrypted group chats, shared looks. The town's heartbeat changed tempo. By evening, pews overflowed, not just with black families, but white allies, Latino neighbors, young activists, elders with canes. Harold Price sat near the front, jaw clenched, his gas station uniform still smudged from work. Renee stood at the pulpit, laptop cable snaking to the old projector. Not what you're about to see is heavy, she warned. But hiding from reality never saved anybody. Truth is our sharpest weapon now. The footage played, the crystal-clear security video showing Jalen's assault from multiple angles. Every slur, every unnecessary blow, every taunting laugh. His cries for his mother bounced against the stained glass windows like a haunting chorus. When the lights rose, silence weighed on the room. Then Mrs. Porter slowly stood, tears cutting tracks down her cheeks. My grandson's Jalen's age, she said hoarsely. Could have been him. Could be any of our kids. The dam broke. Voices collided, people sharing stories they'd swallowed for years. Harassment at traffic stops, sudden arrests, quiet threats. Decades of fear poured out in raw, shaking sentences that filled every corner of the sanctuary. Pastor Briggs moved through the aisles, catching that wildfire of anger and pointing it toward purpose. He organized protest shifts, legal observers, safety teams, making rage something structured instead of explosive. Later that night, Renee sat alone in her car outside Brightmart, staring at the patch of concrete where Jalen had screamed. Security lights threw harsh patterns over the place his blood had stained the ground. She could almost hear echoes of his voice, see the flash of taser prongs, feel his terror through the windshield. You're not just getting justice, baby, she whispered. We're taking this whole rotten structure apart. The gas station lights flickered, switching between too bright and dim. Renee kept watching, etching every detail into memory. That parking lot wasn't just a crime scene anymore. It was the spark that had lit an entire town. Days later, Mason Creek boiled over. Protesters flooded Main Street, signs raised against the brutal Georgia sun. Justice for Jalen thundered off brick storefronts as hundreds marched in careful, peaceful formation. From her spot near the courthouse steps, Renee tracked officers' positions, riot helmets and shields, despite a clearly approved permit. She recognized the way hands hovered near batons, the subtle shifting of formation. They were staging something. Her phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed. "We've got a serious problem," he said, voice ragged. "Cloud backup's gone. Someone sliced through my protections. They didn't just remove files. They nuked the whole damn server." "Can you trace it?" Renee asked. "Working on it," Derek muttered. "But this is pro-level. Multiple entry points, bouncing through overseas servers. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were erasing." Shouts erupted before she could respond. At the intersection, police had blocked the permitted route, pushing forward with shields. More officers closed in behind the crowd, pinning protesters in a tightening funnel of plastic and steel. "I have to go," Renee snapped, ending the call. She sprinted toward the chaos, phone raised, recording every second. The first tear gas canister arced overhead, hissing as it landed dead center in the march. Screams tore through the haze. Mrs. Porter stumbled, coughing violently. Renee dragged her under a shop awning, eyes burning, lungs on fire. Through the white cloud, she saw batons swinging at retreating backs. Her phone buzzed again. Nadia's voice burst through, breathless. "They're raiding my place," she gasped. "6 officers. Warrant for stolen evidence. They're smashing cameras, ripping out hard drives. Maya, they're erasing every source I've got." The call cut. Renee's stomach dropped. This wasn't random. This was coordinated warfare. Gas, raids, server wipes, arrests, all timed together to overwhelm every front at once and smother the story. An hour later, as medics rinsed eyes and treated bruises, another message came. "Pastor Briggs arrested while trying to negotiate with police lines. Inciting a riot," the charge read. Renee drove to the station, furious and helpless. They blocked her from seeing him. "He's being processed," Vickers smirked behind the desk. "Paperwork's complicated. Might take a while." That smug face almost pushed her past professional restraint. She walked out instead, jaw clenched. That night in Atlanta, she found Jalen at Patricia's, glued to news coverage. His eyes were red. "They're saying Pastor Briggs punched a cop," he choked. "They're calling protesters thugs, like we started everything." "Maybe we should stop, Mom," he whispered. "Maybe this is just how it is. No matter what we do, they twist it, hit harder, and win anyway." His voice cracked on the last word. Renee sat beside him, pulling him close. He practically filled her arms now, but for a moment she felt his weight like when he'd fallen asleep on her shoulder as a toddler. "Listen to me," she said gently. "Change always looks impossible at the start. Power never gives up comfort quietly. When we push, they push back harder. That's their only move, make us hopeless." "What if they win?" he murmured. "They only win if we surrender," Renee answered. Every justice movement looked doomed at first. Civil rights, women's rights, workers' rights. People bled for those victories, but refused to quit. Later, after Jalen finally drifted to sleep, Renee sat alone in Patricia's driveway, forehead resting against the steering wheel. Images of the day looped. Gas clouds, smashed cameras, handcuffs on good men, files disappearing. She popped the glove box, searching for painkillers. Her fingers brushed something small and plastic. She pulled out a USB drive she didn't recognize, a tiny note taped around it in Derek's neat handwriting. "Emergency backup, original footage, alt metadata offline. Stay safe." Renee stared at the drive, barely breathing. Somehow, Derek had slipped this into her car days earlier, anticipating exactly this level of scorched earth retaliation. She closed her fist around the device. Here it was. The entire attack in pristine quality. Uncut, unedited, every angle, every audio track. They thought they'd burn the truth to ash. It had survived in miniature. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. It was nearly 2 a.m., but she knew Nadia wouldn't be sleeping. The journalist answered immediately, voice ragged. "They didn't get everything," Nadia blurted. "I backed some stuff." "We're going live," Renee cut in. Silence, one heartbeat long. Then Nadia responded. "Church basement. Briggs gave me a key before they grabbed him. I've got a backup laptop and hotspot hidden there." 1 hour. Mason Creek streets were nearly empty as Renee drove Patricia's old Honda back into town. A couple cruisers patrolled slowly, but nobody gave her borrowed car a second glance. The church's silhouette rose against a star-splattered sky. A faint glow leaked from basement windows. Nadia opened the side door, one eye bruised purple, but gaze bright and focused. "They missed my backup gear," she whispered. "We can stream." Signals rough, but manageable. The basement had become a small command bunker. Folding tables cradled laptops and monitors. Protest maps were taped to the walls, routes marked in highlighter, police choke points circled in red. The air smelled like cold coffee. "How many viewers do you usually pull?" Renee asked, slotting the USB into Nadia's laptop. "A few thousand for breaking stuff," Nadia said. "But that partial clip hit 500,000 before they scrubbed it. People are waiting." Renee pulled a chair in front of the webcam. Her reflection stared back, eyes shadowed, shoulders squared. The look of a woman with nothing left to lose and everything left to fight for. "No redactions," she said. "We show every second, every lie, every cover-up attempt." Nadia's fingers hovered over the keys. "Once this starts, there's no putting it back in the box," she warned. "They will come for us." "Good," Renee replied, adjusting her blazer so her FBI credentials were visible. "Let them raid the church with half the country watching." Nadia hit the button. The red love indicator blinked on. Comments flooded in instantly. Viewers recognized Renee from earlier coverage. Numbers climbed fast, 1,510, chats scrolling too quickly to process. "I'm Special Agent Renee Moore," she began. "A few weeks ago, my 17-year-old son stopped for a soda." "What happened next was caught from multiple angles," she continued. "Mason Creek police have lied about this footage from day one. Tonight, you're seeing exactly what they never wanted you to witness." She played the full security video. Jalen entering, Jalen shopping, Jalen being cornered, beaten, tased. Racial slurs crystal clear, every blow, every plea. Then she split-screened it with the edited version released to the press. "Watch what's missing," she said. "Notice how they chopped out their violence, distorted the audio, invented resistance. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's fabrication. It's a deliberate attempt to criminalize a kid who did nothing." The view count exploded. 50,000? 100 climbing. Shares multiplied. Comment threads detonated across platforms. Renee stayed in prosecutor mode, dismantling each official claim with timestamps, slow-motion playback, and unshakable calm. "Officer Rudd swore my son shoved him first," she said. "This video shows he never laid a finger on him. Chief Randall claimed body cams malfunctioned. That's false. They were manually shut off minutes before the assault." Somewhere above them, a door slammed. Heavy boots clattered across the sanctuary floor. Renee heard shouting, but didn't slow. "They said there was an active robbery that night," she continued. "Recordings show no such call ever came in. Under Randall's leadership, this department has Systematically, the basement door burst open. Officers stormed down the stairs, flashlights spearing the gloom. Nadia threw up her hands but kept the cameras trained on the chaos. Targeted young black men, Renee finished, staring into the lens as officers surrounded them. They've falsified reports, buried evidence, intimidated witnesses, and now they're trying to silence us, but you're already here. You've already seen. Or, cut the feed, one cop yelled, lunging for the laptop. Nadia stepped between, shouting, "This is protected press." Hands grabbed Renee's arms, wrenching them behind her chair. She kept talking, voice steady through the manhandling. "Everyone watching," she said, eyes locked on the camera. "Download this footage. Mirror it. Share it everywhere. They can't bury truth if enough of you carry it." The viewer count ticked past 500,000. Rudd appeared, face twisted. "You have the right to remain silent," he hissed, hauling her to her feet. "I've been quiet long enough," Renee answered. The cuffs bit her wrists, but her expression didn't crack. She turned deliberately toward the lens. One last time, eyes blazing. "They can cuff me," she said, "but not the truth. Not anymore." Tessa, I mean Nadia, shouted the church address as officers tried to knock the camera aside. The final broadcast image showed Renee being led away, head high, while Nadia yelled coordinates for incoming media. Through the basement windows, red and blue lights washed the walls like the first colors of a different dawn. Fluorescent bulbs hummed overhead as Renee sat in the interrogation room, wrists chained to the chair bolted in front of her. The walls felt closer than usual, but she sat straight, breathing slow, controlled. Her shoulders ached from the rough arrest, but she refused to flinch. The door swung open theatrically. Chief Everett Randall strutted in, badge polished to a blinding shine, file folder clutched like a stage prop. "Quite the performance," he smirked, dropping the folder on the table. Slandering law enforcement, whipping up unrest, torpedoing investigations. Not exactly textbook behavior for a federal agent, Agent Moore. Renee held his gaze, silent. He leaned in, cologne sharp and cloying. "Where's all that righteous fire now?" he taunted. She listened to the sounds outside, raised voices, car doors slamming, a growing presence gathering. "I've handled plenty of troublemakers in 30 years, Randall continued, pacing. "Activists, politicians, grandstanding lawyers. They blew through town, thought they'd change everything. I'm still here. They're not." He planted both hands on the table. "But you," he said, "you're special." A Fed turning on her own. "Traitor to the badge." Renee finally spoke. "Your badge isn't mine," she said quietly. 3 words, razor sharp. His smile evaporated. "You'll never work again," he hissed. "Not in law enforcement, not private security, not even guarding a mall. And that mouthy son of yours, he's about to learn what happens when kids step out of line." Before he could rant further, the station doors crashed open. Heavy, synchronized boots hammered the hallway. Renee heard the unmistakable cadence of federal agents pouring in, their clipped commands slicing through the building. "FBI Internal Affairs," a voice barked. "Nobody moves." Randall's confidence shattered. He reached for his radio just as the interrogation door flung open. Assistant Director Keaton stood there, flanked by 2 internal affairs investigators. His usually immaculate suit was wrinkled, tie loosened like he'd driven straight from Atlanta without stopping. "Chief Randall," Keaton said, voice like cold steel. "Step away from Agent Moore. Right now." "Hold on," Randall stammered. "This woman broke multiple laws." "What I see," Keaton cut in, is a federal agent illegally detained after exposing systemic civil rights violations. Unlock her now." Cuffs came off. Renee rolled her sore shoulders. "The footage has over 2 million views," Keaton continued. "Attorney General's office called my cell personally. This station is under federal investigation, effective immediately. All officers in the Jalen Moore incident are suspended, pending review." Outside, chants rolled louder, even through the thick glass. Hundreds of voices braided together. "Justice for Jalen! Justice for Jalen!" Helicopters thumped overhead. News vans crowded the street, satellite dishes raised like metal trees. "You can't just walk in here," and Randall started. "We can," Keaton said evenly, "and we already have. Your files are being seized. Every case over the last decade is under review. Complaints, use of force reports, edited footage." An internal affairs agent stepped forward. "Chief Everett Randall," he said formally, "surrender your badge and weapon. You're placed on administrative leave pending investigation into civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy." Randall's hands shook as he unbuckled his duty belt. The badge he'd hidden behind for decades clinked against the table. Its shine looked dull now. Keaton turned to Renee. "Agent Moore, you're free to go," he said. "The Bureau regrets not backing you sooner." As she walked through the station, she passed officers being separated for questioning. Computer towers unhooked, stacks of files loaded into evidence boxes. Logan sat in a side room, head in his hands, internal affairs agents interviewing him. Outside, the station doors opened onto a sea of people. Morning sunlight bathed the crowd. Faces of every shade, families with kids hoisted on shoulders, handmade signs demanding accountability. Pain and hope stood side by side. Protesters held posters bearing names of other victims, past and present, no longer faceless. Nadia filmed from the base of the steps, eye bandaged, camera steady. Pastor Briggs, freshly released, led the crowd in a thunderous hymn. Renee paused at the top step, taking it all in. This was bigger than her or Jalen now. This was about every mother who'd prayed her child came home alive. About a town refusing to whisper anymore. "This is only the beginning," she murmured, words nearly swallowed by the roar. Justice had finally awakened in Mason Creek, and it wasn't going back to sleep. Inside, Keaton led her towards the records wing. Internal affairs agents in dark jackets flowed through offices, prying open file cabinets, disconnecting desktops, labeling boxes. Officers sat frozen at their desks, hands visible as their badges and guns were carefully collected. "We'll need your help identifying specific cases," Keaton said. "Your report mentioned patterns stretching back years." "Start with anything involving Vickers or Rudd," Renee replied, "especially where body cam footage went missing or complaints were buried." In the archive room, techs had set up scanners and laptops. Stacks of files towered on tables. Renee, spotted familiar names instantly. Young black men arrested on vague charges, cases closed with suspiciously tidy explanations. "Here," she said, pulling a thick folder. "Marcus Jenkins, 2019. Alleged resistance dies in custody. Footage accidentally deleted." Keaton nodded. "Add it to priority. We're building a RICO-style case. Systemic corruption, not just isolated incidents." Through a small window, she watched deputies escort Briggs out of holding. His collar was wrinkled, but his spine straight. The officers who'd cuffed him earlier now couldn't meet his gaze, shame flickering in their expressions. Nadia strode through with camera rolling, press badge front and center, documenting each seized box, every labeled hard drive. CNN picked up our stream, she called. Big networks, too. They're calling it the Mason Creek exposure. Renee allowed herself a tiny smile. Make sure you show the burned evidence room, she said. That fire was as accidental as a staged car crash. A shout near detective offices pulled their attention. Logan was being led out in handcuffs now, his FBI credentials sealed in an evidence bag. He'd tried deleting files from his laptop, but the lake cabin recordings had already nailed him. Renee, he pleaded, I can explain. We investigated dirty cops together, she said coldly. You knew exactly what this was. You just liked the money more. She turned away as agents hustled him toward a waiting federal vehicle. Radio chatter crackled suddenly, officers rushing toward the rear of the building. Through the back window, Renee saw Randall sprinting across the lot, briefcase clutched tight. He's running, Keaton barked. All units converge on the rear exit. Renee cut through the evidence corridor and slipped out a side door, emerging into sunlight just as Randall rounded the corner. He nearly collided with her, skidding to a stop, eyes wild. Going somewhere? She asked calmly, hand resting near her holster. You don't get it, he panted. This town needed me. I kept order. They needed protection, she replied. You gave them fear and graves. Agents surrounded them. Randall lifted his hands as the briefcase dropped, springing open. Bundles of cash spilled onto the asphalt. Years of bribes exposed. They marched him back through his own station in cuffs. 3 months later, Renee stood at a new podium under an autumn sky. The old municipal building had become the Jalen Moore Youth Empowerment Center, bright paint and murals replacing cracked brick and bureaucracy. She looked out at the crowd, neighbors, allies, survivors, and smiled. If you felt this story, she said, share it, subscribe, and stick around. I've handpicked 2 more stories I know you'll love. Take care. A Mother's Worst Fear. An old story in a new century. If you are in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, you have seen this country change many times. You remember riding buses when certain people had to sit in the back. You watched grainy news of dogs and fire hoses turned on peaceful marchers. Maybe you thought, as many did, that those days were behind us. Yet the night Jalen Moore stopped for a simple cold drink in Mason Creek, the past came roaring back. For older Americans, his story is painfully familiar. A young black boy treated as a threat before anyone asks his name. Deputies Vickers and Rudd did not see a high school athlete or someone's child. They saw a body to control. Seniors know that kind of thinking is not new. It is the same poison that fueled lynchings, sundown towns, and stop and frisk. The lesson is harsh but honest. Time alone does not cure injustice. We cannot assume that because we are older, the nation is wiser. Without constant effort, old hatred simply puts on a modern uniform and keeps walking our streets. Courage does not retire. There is another truth many people over 60 understand deep in their bones. Courage has no expiration date. When Renee Moore saw the video of officers beating her son, she did not crumble. She shook, she grieved, and then she moved. Some of you have done the same in your own lives. You buried a spouse, then still got up to care for grandchildren. You faced illness, then still found strength to comfort someone else. Renee reminded us that a parent's love, especially a mother's love, can be fiercer than fear. Yet she did not act only as a mother, she also acted as a seasoned professional. She gathered evidence, called supervisors, filed reports, and refused to be bullied into silence. Many older viewers have been taught to keep your head down and not make trouble. But this story shows that at a certain point in life, you realize there is more to lose by staying quiet. Renee risked her career, her reputation, and even her safety so that her son and other people's sons could walk into a gas station without wondering if they would make it home. The lesson is clear. Even in our later years, we are still called to stand up, speak out, and use whatever authority we have to protect the vulnerable. Community and truth are stronger than fear. If you have lived a long life in America, you know how powerful a small town can be, for good or for harm. Mason Creek had decades of buried complaints, sealed files, and technical problems with cameras. But when Jalen's beating hit the internet and neighbors finally saw the full uncut truth, something shifted. The town did not simply shrug and move on. A gas station owner, an elderly neighbor, a pastor, nurses, young activists, and even people who once stayed silent filled the church pews and the city streets. Many of them were seniors themselves, walking slowly but standing firmly. They did not come only for Jalen. They came for every young man they had watched be stopped, searched, and shamed over the years. Older Americans understand the power of gathering in person, singing together, sharing stories face to face. That same spirit, joined with modern tools like cell phone video and live streams, became a force that even crooked officials could not stop. The lesson for anyone over 60 is powerful. Your voice, your memories, and your willingness to say, "I saw this, and it is wrong," can give younger generations the courage they need. Truth may be delayed, but when a community holds it up together, it becomes impossible to erase. Maybe you are a grandparent now, watching younger family members navigate a world that feels both familiar and strange. You may not march in every protest or spend nights learning new technology, but you still vote, you still show up at town halls, church meetings, and family dinners. When you speak up about what you have seen and what you know, you help protect them. And when you refuse to look away from someone else's child in danger, you honor all the parents who once fought for you. The legacy we choose. For those of you in your later years, Jalen and Renee's story is about far more than one family and one town. It is about the kind of legacy you want to leave behind. You have already lived through eras of segregation and protest, through broken promises and hard-won victories. You know that justice in America has always been a long, unfinished project. The question now is not, will things magically get better? The question is, what part will we play in these final chapters of our lives? Some elders in the story chose comfort and silence. Others opened their doors, gave statements, marched, and prayed. In the end, federal agents arrived, corrupt leaders were exposed, and a youth center rose where an old city office once stood. That did not fix every problem, but it proved something vital. When older and younger generations stand side by side, refusing to surrender to fear, the system has to answer. As a senior, your experience is a lamp for those coming behind you. The lesson is simple, but profound. It is never too late to stand on the side of truth, and the story of justice in this country is still being written. With your wisdom, your courage, and your voice. Friends, after walking with Renee and Jalen through this hard story, I'd love to hear from you. Do you believe that ordinary people, parents, grandparents, neighbors still have the power to push back when the system gets it wrong? Have you ever witnessed injustice in your own town and struggled with whether to speak up or stay quiet? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and pass it along to someone you care about so we can keep learning, healing, and standing for justice together.